Okay. Okay, δάσκαλα, ξεκινάμε. Εντάξει, ξεκινάμε. Ναι.
I am starting. The Center of Ecumenical, Missiological and Environmental Studies, Metropolitan Panteleimon Papageorgiou, CEMES, is inviting you to the extraordinary open public lecture of its master program in Orthodox Ecumenical Theology. And I say extraordinary because of the new developments with the starting process of autocephaly in the Orthodox Archdiocese of Ochrid. And in this round table on this subject, the Archbishopric of Ohrid in the Orthodox Communion, Expectations and Perspectives, we will examine, with the help of our guest speakers coming from different church jurisdictions and academic expertise, who are Professor Svetoslav Riboloff from Bulgarian University of St. Clement of Ohrid in Sofia, Professor Gjoko Gjorgjevski of North Macedonian, St. Clement again, Ochrid Faculty, Skopje, and the Vice President of our CEMES Foundation, Professor Dimitrios Keramidas from the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas of Rome. And we will also deal with the implications for Orthodox unity of the situation developed after the Ecumenical Patriarchate's initiative to start the process of granting autocephaly to the Orthodox Church in North Macedonia, for half a century remaining in a schismatic situation. And I say start the process only because there is a process of autocephaly starting from an initiative by the first in rank Orthodox autocephalous church, the Ecumenical Patriarchate, and moving to a kind of acceptance or receptions. And only at a pan-Orthodox level it will finalized. Now, of course, we all know that all existing autocephalous churches, in not only in the Balkans but also Russia, have yet to be found the final pan-Orthodox acceptance. In my short introduction, I will also mention the predicaments of the Orthodox negative identity for its ecclesiology. Now, it is, of course, my conviction that the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew's primary task all these years was to bring into completion, after nearly 70 years of preparation, of a pan-Orthodox synod. It was for this reason that he avoided to take any initiative previously to heal the painful schism in both Ukraine and North Macedonia, despite numerous requests from various quarters, ecclesiastical and political, of those countries. Now, our CEMES Foundation has dealt during the last 2 years with all these issues from canonical, historical, and theological perspectives, and found that the synodical and patriarchal decisions were taken according to all canonical preconditions, the way I described it earlier, despite being strongly and vehemently opposed by the Russian Orthodox Church, to the extent that, as we all know, she eventually broke Eucharistic communion with the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Now, Moscow Patriarchate's allies in the Balkans reacted in different ways, which will be analyzed by our guests today. Ever since a thorough critical examination of the situation, which is further deteriorated concerning the Orthodox unity, at least the image the Orthodox gives to the not only Christian, but to the world outside, has convinced us that the real causes of this regrettable situation are much more serious. What lies behind this consecutive crisis, the Ukrainian and the Northern Macedonian, is the dispute on an effective primacy role to deal with inter-Orthodox secondary issues, mostly administrative, because mainly the Russian Orthodox Church and some other churches friendly to Moscow Patriarchate refused to accept the ages-old canonical and ecumenically decreed prerogatives of the Ecumenical Patriarch, first to receive Eccleton requests, and second, grant autocephaly. Actually, he, as I said, only has started the process for the autocephaly. Unfortunately, for many centuries, especially in the second half of the second millennium, we Orthodox have unconsciously developed a negative Orthodox identity. We are not what the Bible and our tradition have left us as a legacy, but what the others, and in this case mainly the Catholics, are not. In other words, without a primacy, the visible expression of the Church's unity, accompanied, of course, by synodality. Autocephaly, originally thought of as a necessary step for the people's national identity and aspirations, had unconsciously, however, contributed to the heresy of ethnophilitism and nationalistic tendency in the Orthodox Church. My Orthodox Church, the Autocephalous Orthodox Church of Greece, has started that regretful process almost 2 centuries ago. Needless to say that all newer, as I said, Orthodox autocephalies, including the earlier one of the Russian nation, especially those with patriarchal dignity, can hardly be considered as traditional, according at least to the Orthodox Christian tradition in general, compared with the only one ecumenically decreed in the first millennium, in other words, the Church of Cyprus, and that church also without a patriarchal dignity. Now, the present crisis that appeared after these two closely related autocephalies, the Ukrainian and the North Macedonian, are not isolated cases within Orthodoxy. Previously, the absence of the Russian Orthodox Church, also of the Bulgarian Orthodox Church and the Georgian, the absence from the Holy and Great Council of the 2016 and their veto, the Russian veto to the completion of the pre-conciliar document on autocephaly was widely explained at an ideological and geopolitical level as an attempt to prevent, as they feared, the loss of Ukraine, something that would waken the novel theory of the Russian leadership, political and ecclesiastical, about the so-called Russian people, Ruski Mir. But at a theological level, because of their refusal to accept the primacy role of the ecumenical patriarch. All these actions are, of course, related to their old theory of now being at the stage to need a third empire, the so-called Third Rome theory. The crisis in the autocephalous to be now, what we are discussing, autocephalous to be Archdiocese of Ohrid, is clearly due and is instigated by the Russian Orthodox Church. Refusal to accept a church with a visible head, a protos, with a humble diaconia, actually destroys the basis of the church's unity, especially in view of the existence of a primus, protos, in all other levels, in metropolitan level, in episcopal level, even in the everyday parish practice, where there is always someone who leads the Eucharistic celebration. This deprives the coherence in our church's witness, and any novel perception of church unity based primarily on power, arithmetic superiority, which is promoted by mainly the Patriarchate of Moscow, or even viewed on the basis of Moscow being today the capital of a currently dominant empire, as previously was, that was the argument, the case of the Ecumenical Patriarchate at the city of New Rome, the capital of the Roman Empire. This theory can hardly have any ecclesiological or canonical traditional justification. Now, the new situation in North Macedonia, with the granting of autocephaly to the Orthodox in a schismatic situation for more than half a century or so, in that country unexpectedly brought a wider wave of reactions, followed by ambiguous initiatives, which will be analyzed, I suppose, by our guest speakers. Professor Keramidas have written about it. I hope also we will hear the views by a representative of the Bulgarian Orthodox Church, which considered Ochrid at some period as being at their jurisdiction, and also the representative of a professor from the North Macedonia, the newly autocephalous in process, because, as I said, it is only started, the process started, and there are reactions whether another church, but we will see the arguments also produced by the Romanian church, can be done by other church, a mother church, as it was being discussed during the Holy and Great Council, but the primate of the North Macedonian Church, Archbishop Stephanos, said that we do not want to have something of a autocephaly without a final end, and because we have not decided as Orthodox in the Holy and Great Council, the tradition remains that we will receive, and that is why he first addressed to the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Before I give the floor, allow me to make an appeal that we Orthodox should revisit or at least reconsider our authentic ecclesiology with its principal expression of unity and, of course, especially Catholicity, and abandon our ideological understanding of Orthodoxia being the right doctrine. Mostly this term used against the use of the term Catholic by the Roman Catholic Church as their identity mark. Actually, all our predicaments concerning the unity, or at least the image of a united Orthodoxy, are the result of refusing to acknowledge the ecumenically decreed prerogatives of a primus in our church. Now, I would like to invite Professor, we'll start from the Church of North Macedonia, Professor Gjoko Gjorgjevski, to introduce us his idea or his church's understanding of all this, and then we'll go to our colleague from the Bulgarian University of St. Clement of Ochrid, Professor Svetoslav Riboloff, and we will finish with Professor Dimitrios Keramidas. Professor Gjorgjevski, the floor is yours now. Unmute yourself. Okay, yes. Final.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you for your kind invitation to be part of this important for me meeting. It is the first one, and I'm honored to be part of this. Of course, we witnessed a rapid change of events and a drastic development regarding the status of my church, of our church. And there are two most important decisions that I would like to highlight. Of course, the first one is the decision of the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople to answer to the appeal of our church. And the second
Gjoko, excuse me, I forgot to say that we need, at least for the sake of our audience, to see the history, how it happened, and how this independence was sought by the North Macedonian, and how you break communion with the others, and so on and so forth, in order to understand, not for us, because we know this, but for our audience. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. As I said, I mentioned that the two most important decisions, movements. I could say the first one is the decision of the Ecumenical Patriarchate to answer to the appeal, and the second is also the reconciliation and the decision of the Serbian Orthodox Church to grant autocephaly. The first one is connected with the decision of the Holy Synod of the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople, decided to recognize the Archbishopric of Ohrid. It was last year, 9th of May 2022, and it was an answer to the appeal of my church in I think it was 2018. And with this pronouncement, the Ecumenical Patriarchate recognized the church. It stays known as Macedonian Orthodox Church Archbishopric of Ohrid, as Archbishopric of Ohrid, recognizing the ecclesiastical hierarchy as headed by the actual head of the church, Archbishop Stefan, and upheld as canonical and valid in the entire Orthodox world. And the next week, the Serbian Bishops' Council voted to grant the Macedonian, our church, the autocephaly. After that, several churches as Russia, Poland, Bulgaria, last week Romania and Czech lands joined in the decision to recognizing the autocephaly, and the another recognizes the canonicity of the church, like the Church of Antioch, Georgia, I don't know, and remain several. I think only Alexandria, Cyprus, and Albania have not made any decision. That means that in a short time of approximately 1 month, a half-century problem was solved. The misunderstanding with the Serbian Orthodox Church and the acceptance by the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople, and with this, the restoration of communion with other local Orthodox churches. All this came unexpectedly, although it was a long awaited, of course. To be honest, if someone had asked me a year ago, I was sure that I would not live to see my church recognized and accepted. But on the other hand, it is also true that all this did not happen all at once. Years ago, the establishment and improvement of relations with other Orthodox churches, above all with those from the immediate neighborhood, was noticed. Something what was not imaginable, for example, 25 years ago, was done in the last decade. For example, more than 10 of our students studied in Thessaloniki. 2 of them are already employed at our faculty. One is assistant, another is assistant professor. And through the activity of certain monasteries, numerous visits to the country were realized. It is also very important that always our state's delegation, but also our simple students and theologians were always received with great joy by His Holiness Patriarch Bartolomei. Maybe I would like especially highlight the cooperation, connection and cooperation with neighboring Bulgaria. Always we have constantly a lot of visits to our churches and monasteries. At the faculty level, I could say that our faculty had the best cooperation in the past 20 years with Sofia and another theological faculties from Bulgaria. We are talking about the exchange of professors, roundtables, international conferences. In any case, we are always frequent guests of each other. Of exceptional importance are the good and regular communication of clergy, especially between bishops and superiors. There are a lot of our students, they are still studying there, and those who completed their basic or postgraduate studies, they are now professors, some even bishops. And to be maybe most clear, more than a third of our professors and assistants completed their studies at one of the Orthodox universities of Thessaloniki, Sofia, Bucharest, Moscow, and St. Petersburg. I would like to say, even though that we are in isolated position, we were certainly helped in this previous period as much as possible. And of course, considering that is maybe not advisable for me to say what now the other churches are doing or they have to do, I think that our church, should respond accordingly to the acceptance by other Orthodox churches, regardless of their current position. That is why I would put the focus on starting cooperation where it has not existed so far and proving it where it already exists. This is my vision, and at all the levels, from organized visits of believers to the establishment and promotion of cooperation with faculties and universities, to strengthening of meetings between bishops, common liturgies. With those who know each other, we should know each other better and give the opportunity for those who don't know us to get to know us. The focus would still remain on our, of course, Balkan area, which is the most natural. And of course, the big challenge now is Serbia and the Serbian Orthodox Church, because now we are starting all our, how could I say, connections at the highest level, there are already a lot of liturgies between our bishops, and cooperation between our faculties and students exchange are already being planned. This came with relief and great joy, considering that previously the ties between our two peoples were excellent, the only obstacle being the church issue. So this whole process is speaking very naturally, but it's still at the very beginning. So I hope that I am not disappointing you, that I think that it is no appropriate to comment what the other churches, Orthodox churches in the Orthodox family are doing, or what they should do. I don't know if the comparing is very appropriate, but now in this situation, when we are talking about the topic of autocephaly, it is like if we're talking about the medicine, the Orthodox churches are the surgeons and we are the patient. And during the chirurgical intervention, I think the patient should not talk a lot. So for all your another maybe questions after, I'm here to answer.
Okay. Thank you for your first short intervention about the present situation. Now, since the history of that famous, at the very earliest stages, the Archdiocese of Ochrid, from the almost Byzantine era, and later from the understanding of this geographical area, either in relation to the Serbian church or Serbian nation or the Bulgarian, it had a history. So I will now give the floor to Professor Svetoslav, because we expect also to listen from his perspective and from his church's perspective the issue that concerns the whole Orthodoxy now. Myself, I mean, my personal experience is that last month I paid a visit to Ochrid, and I was impressed by the so-called Jerusalem of the Balkans and the religious atmosphere there. So, Svetoslav, please, the floor is yours. And also, either Professor Keramidas or Professor Dimitriadis, to see whether there is a YouTube, because I haven't found it, in order to, excuse me, let me see whether I can make a share screen to see, or to see, no, to give
I think it
link to the our YouTube channel. This is what is missing, and I try to find whether, and I make some invitations to questions from the audience, but I couldn't. Please, either Nicholas or Dimitrios.
Yeah, there are. Professor, good evening. Professor, I will share it to your chat in a while. Okay, there are some questions. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Now.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Vassiliadis. Thank you for the invitation, Dimitri, and all other colleagues. First, Professor Vassiliadis mentioned that there was a detail, I'll start from there, that the Bulgarian church observed, or the Council of the Bishops, the Bulgarian church observed the Ochrid as part of the Bulgarian diocese, or at least as part of the history of the Bulgarian diocese. Yes, but no also. Nowadays, the Bulgarian bishops do not observe Ochrid as part of the Bulgarian church. Historically, yes, but actually now, no. And the question is, why all these negative reactions, especially in Skopje, and from the side of the president of modern North Macedonia, after the decision of the Bulgarian Synod, Holy Synod, in June. After the decision of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, which was very well admired, very well accepted in Sofia and in all over the Bulgaria, the people admired this decision, the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, to restore the communion with the church in North Macedonia. And a few days later, the bishops, especially the Archbishop of Skopje, decided to visit Belgrade, as long as I remember, and to receive a tomos of autocephaly from the Serbian church, which was for me a surprise, because His Soul Holiness Bartholomew said clearly, it's up to you, it's up to your choice what to do next. And having the approval and the blessing of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, for me, it was absolutely out of reason, out of logic, to go to Belgrade to take a tomos. And all we know that such tomos of autocephaly is granted just by the mother of the Orthodox churches, Constantinople. Anybody else doesn't issue tomos for autocephaly. And a little bit later, 2 or 3 weeks later, Bulgarian Holy Synod decided something which was very diplomatic. Our bishops, I know them, almost all of them personally, decided not to follow a line that is drawn by the Bulgarian nationalists. Bulgarian nationalists are weak, not just now, but for many decades. Okay, they have very strong voices in internet, but they're weak. They can win elections. They have not any strong influence in the modern Bulgarian democracy. And our bishops decided to keep aside from this strict line of the nationalists and did something very diplomatic. They've just said, okay, we'll be in communion with this church, we'll restore the communion with this church. You know very well, you know better than me, that the most of the bishops of the Bulgarian church, including the Patriarch, his Beatitude Neophytos, he for many, many years, for decades, was trying to manage the relationships with the Christians in modern North Macedonia since the time of Yugoslavia. And they decided, what decided the Bulgarian bishops? They are not going to tackle any decision, nor to the decision of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, neither the decision of the Serbian church. They decided something very diplomatic. They decided that they will be in communion with the Church of North Macedonia without mentioning the name, because the decision of His All Holiness Bartholomew and the Holy Synod of the Ecumenical Patriarchate was very clear. They decided that it will be the Church of Ochrid, Achridos, the historical name of the local church. And what our Serbian brothers did, the bishops of the Serbian church issued a document where it's written Macedonian church, which is obviously a problem. And the Bulgarian bishops know very well. They tried to be diplomatic. in December, after a bishop of the Russian church, who was obviously playing the Russian game, which in this moment, for this situation, for this political situation, is in favor of the Serbian position. He came in early December to Sofia to press our bishops. They refused to meet him. Just two of them decided to meet him for a while, to serve a liturgy in the Russian church, the church of the Russian embassy in the center of Sofia. And after that, they were pressed, as long as I know, to accept the so-called Serbian Tomos. They again did something very diplomatic. They didn't accept the Serbian Tomos. Meanwhile, if you follow the news from Bulgaria, the biggest Bulgarian pro-European parties, GERB from the right side, and Democratic Bulgaria in the center, did two memorandums in the parliament. And a memorandum is a very serious thing. It's something like political ultimatum. And they've said to the Bulgarian church, do not acknowledge the Serbian Tomos. These are the most powerful parties in the Bulgarian parliament at that time. Now we will have elections in early April. We have no parliament. But at that time, these were the most powerful parties in the parliament. And do you know what they said? They've said, do not acknowledge the Serbian Tomos because it disturbs the ecclesiastical order. The both texts, the both memorandums were, I'm sure, were written by colleagues, by people who are educated in theology, and they know what they say, they know what they mean. And in this case, we see how the most powerful parties decided to take the side, not just of Constantinople, but of the international order into ecclesiastical affairs, and to show how the decision of the Serbian church is not fair, to some extent, let's say. But in both cases, in June and also in December, I was surprised that in Skopje there was strong anti-Bulgarian reaction, and in both cases, Bulgarian bishops were accused of nationalism, expansionism, revisionism, which is not fair, which is not true. They tried just to be polite. They tried just to be diplomatic, not to disturb neither the Patriarchate of Constantinople, nor the Patriarchate, neither the Serbs, neither the Russians, neither the Church of North Macedonia. They mentioned, we acknowledge this church of the country of North Macedonia. They refused to interfere. They refused to, because since the Balkan Wars, maybe from the late 19th century, this is the problem of the Bulgarian expansionism on the Balkans, and the problem with the wars and all this disturbs and turmoils of the wars. And Bulgarians are very, very careful when they say something about North Macedonia, about all these relationships and all this stuff. So for me, it was absolutely surprising that the bishops from the Church of Ochrid decided to resort to Belgrade for Tomos and not to wait from Constantinople. For me, it was out of any logic, but it's up to them. It's not my job. And from other side, I'm not official representative of the Bulgarian Church. I'm just an observer who is working in the Faculty of Theology at the university. I'm to some extent state servant of the university. I'm not directly connected to the church. Yes, to some extent, yes, but not directly. So, what else? Yes, the society of North Macedonia always looks at Bulgaria as the enemy, and the Bulgarian bishops try to keep distance. So I would say it in this way. In the same position was Greece 10 years, 20 years ago. And what about the history of the title Ochrid or Church of Achris? Yes, in the constitution of the Bulgarian Church, the last one that was published about 10 years ago, there is written that the modern Bulgarian Church, the Church, the Patriarchate of Bulgaria, of modern Bulgaria, has its past, and it somehow has as legacy in its history the Church of Tirnovo. This is the last Bulgarian capital before the Ottoman invasion on the Balkans, the Church of Ochrid, which was the second Bulgarian capital before the Ottoman period, and the early Archbishopric of Preslava, which was the first Christian capital of Bulgaria. So this is fixed in the Katastatikos Chartis, is the constitution of the Bulgarian Church. From there appears this small problem: what the Bulgarian Church will do with this title. Yes, from one side, on one hand, it is a problem, but on the other hand, it's not just that heavy, deep problem, and there is solution of this situation. It's not but on the other side, the voices from North Macedonia were very, very, very aggressive, including the president of the Republic of North Macedonia, Pendarovski, who just said how they dare to give name of our church. No, they didn't actually. They just tried to be polite, not to be in conflict. And I wanted just to explain what was at that time in Bulgaria. Why the Holy Synod of the Bulgarian Church took these two decisions in June and in December. And the truth is that the Bulgarian society practically is not interested in this subject, I would say, at all. And they have another, for instance, the situation in Ukraine is much more interesting than the situation in North Macedonia now. And let's say Bulgarians realized, maybe slowly, maybe difficult, but realized in the last 30 years that they are not very well accepted in Skopje, and they don't need to try to interfere, to play games there. No. They try just to keep distance. And from this point of view, the problem with the title Archbishopric of Ohrid becomes more problematic, because Bulgarians started thinking about North Macedonia like the Greeks 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and tried to emphasize the distance than to find out something in common. And I think the idea of keeping this title was to find out something in common, to maintain the common cultural Christian legacy and not to refuse the other. Bulgarians 30 years ago were a little bit different. At that time, there were still alive people who were born in North Macedonia and who left this country as children during the wars. Now these people just passed away, and the young, their families already do not keep that active connections with this, the population of North Macedonia. So the situation is completely different now from this period in 30 years ago. So this is my point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Svetoslav. I forgot to say that the clarification of the title of your church by the Ecumenical Patriarchate was mainly due to some reactions by the Greeks. On my part, I have no problem with your now canonical name, North Macedonia. This is my first point I would like to mention, and in view of what you said about the developments in your church and also some reactions or fears by the others. The second is what I need to bring into your attention, both of you who have just spoken and to the one who is going to follow, Professor Keramidas, is the very important first comment we received. And I will give the question to you, and I hope this will be at the end answered. Do we really think that orthodoxy really exists? Question mark. Only local churches really exist, unfortunately. And this is what I hinted at my introduction, that the image of the Orthodox Church is a little bit shadowed by the impression given that we are not in a way the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church which we confess in our creed, but a kind of confederation with no so much enmity, but at the same time not with good relations between themselves of independent Orthodox churches. So this is the question we received. I hope this will be answered at the end of this round table. Professor Keramidas, the floor is yours. Now you have heard the various views from both the Bulgarian and the North Macedonian side. You have heard also the question, the regretful question by our audience. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Professor Vassiliadis and the colleagues who spoke before me. I will try to speak about the what we could call the ecclesiology of autocephaly, the sense that whatever the readings of the autocephaly of the Ukrainian church or the Macedonian, North Macedonian church are, it is important to rediscover the ecclesiology of autocephaly. That will be one point I would like to highlight, and the second point, which is perhaps linked to the question of that we have received, is who guarantees unity in global orthodoxy and the worldwide orthodoxy, because the question regarding autocephaly is also, to a very good extent, a question about unity and not about disunity. So I think we can all agree that whatever the readings of the Church of North Macedonia are, it is the good news are that this church has entered into sacramental Eucharistic communion with the rest of the Orthodox world. Now, as to the ecclesiology of autocephaly, I think we can all agree that autocephaly is not a national achievement, because the church is something more than a national church, or should be something very more than simply a national church. The nature of the church goes beyond her national identity or identities, including perhaps names, titles. I think there was a meeting of the bishops of the Church of North Macedonia yesterday or this morning. They issued a communique in which they said that they want to keep and maintain the tradition of the Orthodox Church, the holy canons, the dogmas, the scriptures, their own chart, constitution, and the name. In my view, the name is not the most important of the issues that we should discuss. It is important because it gives a certain identity to local church, in this case to the Church of North Macedonia, but it is not, it should not be the major issue. But this is my view of things. So the ecclesiology of autocephaly is, in my view, very important because we nominally condemn ethnophilitism, but we behave as if we haven't done so. Ethnophilitism has been condemned, as we know, in the late 19th century. This condemnation was reiterated in the Council of Crete in some of its documents by many primates. So the question is not to add in Orthodox Communion one more national church, and this goes both for the Church of North Macedonia and the Ukrainian Church. The idea is to help a local church to construct her own identity in communion with the other churches, and to restore schism wherever they exist, to heal wounds, and to help people, the people of God, enter in communion with the rest of the Orthodox communion. This should be, I think, the purpose of the autocephaly granted by the Ecumenical Patriarchate to the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, and the same intention, I think, is valid for the Church of North Macedonia. Now, even though a church exists at the local level, a particular church is in communion with the whole Orthodox world, not only sacramentally, Eucharistically, but also visibly. So this visible horizontal, if we could say so, unity means that there is, on the one hand, an independence given to one church in terms of autocephaly or autonomy in other cases, but this ecclesiastical independence means paradoxically the dependence of one church by the mother church and her communion with the other churches. So it is not independence given, but through the granting of autocephaly or autonomy, the church enters into a communion with everything that this communion implies for a church in terms also of faith, of sacraments, of canonical tradition, but also visible unity. So what perhaps is the main question for the Orthodox world today is to achieve to what we could call a communicatio idiomatum, not at the Christological level, but ecclesiological level. So what the church can offer to each other, what are the experiences, the missionary, pastoral, ecumenical experience that the churches can offer to each other. So it is not, as Professor Vassiliadis said before, a question of arithmetic ecclesiology, of increasing the number of the autocephalous churches, of constructing federation of churches, but of constructing unity. In that sense, a new autocephalous church is adopting some obligations, not only rights, but also obligations. Now, this intra-ecclesial communion can be, as I said before, horizontal communion, not only with the other church, but with all the other Orthodox churches. But for what concerns, and this is my second point, the unity of the Orthodox world, and to the extent that we want to keep and respect our canonical tradition, means also the unity, who guarantees unity in the worldwide Orthodox communion. So we have in our canonical tradition the idea of primacy that is being affirmed at the local level, the level of diocese, bishops, at the regional level, that is at the level of patriarchal or autocephalous churches, but we haven't yet agreed all Orthodox what are the prerogatives of the one that should guarantee unity at the pan-Orthodox, if not the universal so-called level. So we need an exercise of unity, of visible unity, of canonical unity, which is, along with faith sacraments, one of the three. We need an exercise at the pan-Orthodox level of unity. And this should be done, as I said, canonically, visibly, structurally, which is a structure that guarantees unity. To understanding of many, including perhaps of our center, of myself, traditionally, historically, also canonically, the Ecumenical Patriarchate, being the first church in the order of the Orthodox Church, should have this role to guarantee the unity of the whole Orthodox Church. It is not a right, but an obligation, a responsibility, and even a sense of service, of sacrifice, to sacrifice, if necessary, one its own self for the sake of the unity of all. This, of course, should be done with the other churches. And we should listen to what the other churches want to say beyond any political, ideological, and, as I said before, nationalistic arguments. This is not a conflict among different national narratives. It shouldn't be the case. It is not and shouldn't be the case of geopolitical contrasts or ideological conflicts. So the one who guarantees unity and should guarantee unity, because this is how the Orthodox canonical tradition has been for many centuries, should do so with the other churches, what we call in a synodical way. So there is a body of churches that should act as one body. And again, this means an obligation. There are many churches, many Orthodox churches, that ask for a better or a major exercise of synodality. Yes, that could be the case, to exercise more intensively synodality in the Orthodox world. But the same churches should also ask for a major exercise of primacy in the Orthodox Church. Otherwise, the lack of primacy would lead exactly to a federation of churches that are nominally united, but in fact divided. And each of these churches gives her own interpretation on who and how grants autocephaly on other issues that can vary from relations with the non-Christians, with non-Orthodox, or issues related to liturgical renewal or the renewal of Orthodox tradition. So yes, the voice of the Orthodox churches should be heard seriously, should be taken into consideration synodically, and perhaps we should find permanent structures of exercise of this synodical meeting of the church. But synodality without primacy does not exist. And I'm afraid this could be the case now in the Orthodox world of all these different canonical interpretations of the Graticon autocephaly, which has created many difficulties also to ourselves. So when we speak to non-Orthodox about what is autocephaly, we cannot find any answer that is compatible with facts, with reality, and this is a problem. So in my view, synodality, which is a gathering of the churches, should go along with the exercise of primacy, with the exercise of synodality. It might be a painful process, but it is nevertheless a necessary process if we are still interested in the maintaining of Orthodox unity. So I think the autocephaly of the Church of North Macedonia is also an opportunity to discover all these ecclesiological dimensions of autocephaly, create a common language or a common understanding of the canonical tradition that should be dynamically applied and interpreted in light of the actual circumstances. This should be a pan-Orthodox task, a pan-Orthodox work, painful, difficult, long, but if we need to do that, to guarantee our unity and our relations with non-Orthodox, but it is not only an Orthodox issue, it has also effects on our relations with other churches with whom discuss the same problems about unity, synodality, and primacy. The dialogue with the Catholic Church is focusing on this particular aspect of the correlation between synodality and primacy. So that is for the moment my approach to the issue. Perhaps we can come back with more questions. Thank you.
We thank you, Professor Keramidas. Professor Keramidas has already written his views. I would like also to remind the reactions which I have taken from his posts. And for me, the most problematic, although it seems reasonable, is the explanation given by the Patriarchate of Romania, which has recognized the autocephaly, but under the name Archdiocese of Ochrid and North Macedonia, with a place in Skopje, and of course the Archbishop Stephanos as the Archbishop of Ohrid, Skopje, and North Macedonia. And they explained this view, which means that recognized the autocephaly given, because by the Patriarchate, the Ecumenical Patriarchate, only recognition of communion was offered in a way, recognized that we are not any longer in split, but we can have, but without saying anything, implying that concerning the name, because the name was the problem, the details, these can be taken by in cooperation with the Patriarchate of Serbia. However, the Serbian Church did not rely only on this detailed clarification, but he issued a tomos. The problem is that, as I said, Romania explained that he recognized this because that was their proposal at the Holy and Great Council. However, as the Archbishop Stephanos recognized, since there was no unanimous decision on autocephaly in Crete, in the Holy and Great Council, we remained at the tradition we have so far. So the problem is, can anyone explain with their views, how what Professor Keramidas said, their understanding of autocephaly, their understanding of unity, of the oneness of the church, and I am giving the right to the questions asked that unfortunately there is no unity in the Orthodox Church. There is rather disunity because this simple, very simple and secondary and unimportant issue, because there is no dogmatic differentiation between the various churches, but we cannot give at least in how we ecclesiologically place our churches in relation to each other has not been accepted. The problem is that in my view, now this is my personal view, what is lacking in the situation of the North Macedonian Orthodox Church is the territorial issue. There is no such document either by Serbia or by the Ecumenical Patriarchate or whatever that say that this is the territory in which there is an independence and autocephaly of the Orthodox in that region. Because I remind you that what was very important in the similar case in Ukraine, it was that autocephaly, it was given to a previously under the homophorion of Patriarchate Metropolis of Kiev, only in the present state of Romania, not in the diaspora. And I remember now with this North Macedonian case, I remember during my stay in the United States, we have a kind of cooperation between all the divided in the diaspora national Orthodox churches, and it was also one from North Macedonia. Now, this is in regard to a kind of diaspora of the only recently recognized autocephaly of the North Macedonian Church, or they will include also this, in other words, include also diaspora. And this is another problem which is not for the present discussion, but this is what I wanted to say, and I give immediately the floor also again for a second round to answer these questions received and all the others. Starting again from Gjorgjevski, Professor Gjorgjevski. Please.
Oops. Thank you so much. No, I completely agree with the way of thinking of Professor Keramidas regarding the necessity of synodality and primacy. And I think that the role and the position of the ecumenical patriarch and his primacy indisputable should be indisputable. Regarding our case, of course, that acceptance of our church by all Orthodox churches, it is possible only through the ecumenical patriarchate. So therefore, it is the situation is quite clear. Maybe I will. I have some comments regarding the some details of the Professor Riboloff said regarding the relationship between our countries and churches. Obviously that we were better friends before this famous friendship agreement. Yes, now the situation is not very agreeable, not very pleasant. There is a strong political how could I say, to define it better. However, all voices that you could hear from my country regarding this problem between our two states are positions of the current politicians. I didn't hear any, I haven't heard any comment, negative comment from my church toward the Bulgarian Orthodox Church. We are very grateful for all that Bulgarian Orthodox Church have done, and for the actual decision also. Another fact that our bishops are smarter than the politician. Several weeks ago, our bishops were invited together to celebrate together in Bulgaria. So, and regarding the name of the Archbishopric of Ohrid, we know all that the famous Church of Ochrid is of great importance. It is part of history of many neighboring countries, and not neighboring, also distant nations and countries, but it must be primarily be the church of the people who lived then and live today in Ochrid. The ancient Ochrid Archbishopric has made up of predecessors, grandfathers, and their great grandfathers of the people who today make up our. It should be acceptable also for the Bulgarian Orthodox Church, hopefully. And regarding the unity of the Orthodoxy, I don't know if there is disunity, or maybe because all this problem, there is lack of the visibility of the unity. But maybe with the help of God, and it was said by Professor Keramidas that this way could be very difficult and painful, but I think that Orthodoxy must start to work a little bit more to build the unity more real and more visible. Yes, thank you.
What about you, Professor? Because we have received many questions, and I see how we can communicate to you. I think Professor Dimitriadis has communicated through this platform many questions.
Through the chat, I have shared the question. Yeah.
It is my turn, or?
Yes, Svetoslav.
Okay.
Also take into consideration the questions received in the chat.
If I may, I don't know.
Νίκο, δεν ακούγεσαι καλά.
Can I make a very short comment on what I see here?
Okay. Let's say I haven't anything against the name Archbishopric of Achis or Ochrid.
Can you hear me?
In my opinion, the decision of Ecumenical Patriarch was the most diplomatic and acceptable for everybody. But just the context between North Macedonia and Bulgaria now is such that doesn't allow that much that liberal, let's say, acceptance of this for the moment. I'm sure for the moment of this title. And if we are sincere, it's not up to policy. If we look at main agents of this tension between two countries, between North Macedonia and Sofia and Bulgaria, we can see that in both countries, the agents of these tensions are parties who are sponsored by Moscow. So from the both sides is Moscow. So it's a little bit strange, but all the analysts in the both countries registered this problem. And what next? About the specific misunderstanding of the role of the unity in the Orthodox world, I would sign every word that Professor Keramidas said. But we have to have in mind that in the Slavic Orthodox countries, we have not deep knowledge in the Orthodox canons, in the corpus canonum of the Orthodox Church, because we have not full translations. For instance, in Bulgaria, we have part of the canons translated into Bulgarian, and to some extent, some of the translations are not right. In Romanian, I'm not sure. I know that the Romanians have the whole corpus canonum, but in Serbia, I'm sure that they haven't. In Russia, they haven't. So in the Slavic Orthodoxy, as generally, there is a common tendency of underestimation of the canon law and the canon order of the church. Well, I have to tell you that in the primary ecclesiastical education, the seminarists the teachers there do not mention at all the role of the ecumenical patriarchate. So this is a deep problem that does not come from the last 10 or 20 years, but it comes from the 19th century and from the ecclesiastical education in Russia that imposed a different model of ecclesiastical education, and it was result of a different way of developing the relationships between state and church. So it is a deep problem that reflects in the modern times and the concept of the Russian theologians that there is a multi-pole Orthodox world, like as well as Putin wants to shift the modern policy in multi-pole system, where the United States are not anymore central player. In the same way, the Russian thinkers in theology very often say about multi-pole church ecclesiastical models, and the ecumenical patriarchate does not play any role anymore because Rome does not exist anymore, and Constantinople is in the hands of the Turks, and so on, so on, so on. So it is not something new. It comes from 19th, 18th century, and it's really deeply rooted in the Slavic Orthodoxy. Okay, Bulgaria to some extent is a different case. Bulgaria was part of the, let's say, the Orthodox world of the ecumenical patriarchate, and somewhere between the 50s and the 70s of the 19th century, just the Bulgarian elite jumped into the team of the Russians. So they started shifting a new ecclesiastical identity on the basis of the Russian idea of Orthodoxy, Moscow or Petersburg as center of Orthodoxy, which does not need canon law, which does not need the canons in their full amount. So we must realize this fact, that the Slavic Orthodoxy has different idea of unity and different idea for the church. To what extent it's right idea, to what extent it's theologically correct, I'm not going to say now, but the fact is fact. The most of the, even in North Macedonia, you see how their bishops were absolutely confused what to do. They celebrated divine liturgy with the ecumenical patriarchate. A few days later, they were invaded in Belgrade, and they were granted there with a Thomas, which was a little bit, let's say, at least strange. So.
Okay, let's, in the remaining time, very few minutes we have, to go quickly to the prospects now. From what I realized, the insistence of the ecumenical patriarchate to avoid mentioning the name Macedonia is because the Greeks have some sensitive ideas about it. I don't know what the prospects are from the recognition, which we hope, by the Alexandrian Patriarchate, Church of Greece, Antiochian Patriarchate, the Albanian Orthodox Church, the Church of Cyprus. With regard now to the developments in the wave of so-called recognitions, but with proposals concerning the name. So before you respond quickly, I would also ask Professor Keramidas to give his second thoughts after the second round, and then we go again to you and we finish tonight's session. Dimitri.
Yes, thank you again. Well, as to what Svetoslav was saying about the influence of politics in church vocabulary, in church language, well, we should perhaps create a process of discernment and a kind of automatism which currently does not exist. When a church adopts an aggressive political language, the rest of the Orthodox world should say stop, and this is not according to our tradition, to our identity, to our canons, to whatever. A process that currently does not exist, unfortunately. That's why we have so many views as the Orthodox Church are. The war in Ukraine has dramatically highlighted this reality, the absence of a center of coordination that could express the Orthodox voice, also in major issues like the war of Ukraine. But we need to do that. Otherwise, we have unilateral approaches to social issues, the war situation, the peace process, building peace processes. So we need to bring all Orthodox churches together somehow, but we need also to have one who coordinates this work and at the end decides on behalf of the whole Orthodoxy. But again, it is a matter of conversion, of understanding of what autocephaly is. It is not, again, a question of multiplication of the autocephalous churches. We don't need that. There are other churches of Western tradition that have this kind of understanding of unity. It is not the Orthodox case, but if we need, if we're interested again in unity, we should find concrete, visible, structural ways of keeping unity. Otherwise, we will end like the Lutheran Federation or the Anglican Communion, a sort of visible unity, which does not respect the Orthodox understanding of unity. So we need a discernment process, but it should be undertaken by the whole Orthodox world, and it needs also a conversion of understanding of church, of understanding of autocephaly. We do not want to abolish this ancient institution, the institution of autocephaly, which belongs to our canonical patrimony. We nevertheless need to perhaps recognize that the autocephalies or the patriarchal status given in the first millennium were not of the same stature as those granted in the second millennium. In the second millennium, which are more national. So if we want to go back to our sources, we need to rediscover that the church is a church in a given territory, not of a given nation. In that sense, the Orthodox diaspora to which I belong currently has no ecclesiological identity. So we belong to no one, yet we have transferred in the territory of the diaspora all national divisions, which is serious damage to our witness, to our encounter with the others. So we face concretely this division also in the territory of diaspora. It's not only a question of Orthodox so-called countries, it is a question that affects seriously and practically the whole Orthodox world. Again, I would readdress the issue towards a coexistence between synodical process, permanent synodical processes in Orthodoxy, with the concrete role of a primate within this synodal process. I think this is the solution for the future. Yes.
I'm very sorry. If you have read the questions and comments and someone of you would like to respond, I don't agree with the comment or the question asked to my colleague Gjoko, because it is a polite discussion and not a witnessing of our own and understanding. It's not a confrontation, but a kind of synodality in a scientific discussion. So this is my comment. And my second comment with regard to someone, Gaveo, who placed a kind of independence and dependence and the unity. And the question was why this was not, why this was violated by the Ecumenical Patriarchate in regard to Ukraine. In my, to be honest, I didn't understand what is the problem, because there is a fully recognized and independence in Ukraine without any dependence. The problem is to have this sort of independence in autocephaly, but keep the unity in not only in faith, but also in the structure of the church. So this is what, and we are glad, and I have to admit that we acknowledge and we are very grateful to the questions put to our YouTube direct channel. Mike, your comment, if I would sum up, yes, Nicholas, but before giving the floor to you, let's hear from Gjoko, and then to you.
Now, regarding the comment, I must say that I have to follow the decision of also of my church regarding the agreement of pan-Orthodox use of the name of the Archbishopric of Ohrid. So for internal use, we still use the name of Macedonian Orthodox Church, Archbishopric of Ohrid, and also with other churches don't have any problems with the name. But of course, for part of the Orthodox use, it is necessary to follow, and as Professor Vassiliadis told, it is part of this polite debate. I would like at the end to thank you for this opportunity. I hope that this is the first opportunity. This is occasion to invite you personally in Skopje and to continue with this second round table. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. This is what I was going to ask to continue face to face after the whole issue was settled down. And perhaps in spring or in summer, to see also with the blessing of the Archbishop of the newly united with the rest of Orthodox Church, to have also this kind of discussion. Nikolai, please explain to the audience again what the CEMES Foundation also is planning about geopolitics, because you have written something. Nikolaos.
Έχει πρόβλημα με τον ήχο, δεν μπορεί να μιλήσει.
Okay. Let me then explain. Nikolaos Dimitriadis, the president of CEMES, comment is as follows. If I could sum up on what I see in the news feed of the YouTube comments, the comments we all read, and understand regarding today's remarks being discussed, I would say, Nikos said, that definitely there are politics involved, or geopolitics, which we should take into serious consideration in our research. This is what we do in CEMES. Okay. The recommendation is that we have exceeded the time set to us. So I would like to thank all the participants and all the listeners through our YouTube channel. And as we accept, I hope this is not my view only, but also the rest of the panel, that we will have another meeting, probably face to face, and we will be accept the invitation in the near future. And I would say good night to everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Professor Gjorgjevski.
Everybody.
See you soon. Yes, everybody.
Sveto and Gjoko, we became now not only brothers and sisters in Christ, but also in our scientific company. So we see each other very soon. Hopefully, when the whole issue of North Macedonian issue is settled, finally settled. Of course.
Good night.